Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Winning with Insights. Today, I'm joined by Stefan. He is the co-founder of PointerPro, a professional assessment application software for professional services businesses and many other use cases. Stefan, thank you so much for joining me today. Lovely to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Mike, for having me.
No problem. Hey, Stefan, maybe you can shortly start by introducing yourself and tell everybody what you've done in the past and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Stefan. I've graduated as an engineer back a long time ago. That's 1995. And then afterwards, I have started my career in consulting. I've started working for Price Waterhouse at that time. Then quickly it merged into PwC. And then afterwards, I moved to CSC, Computer Science Corporation, which is now called DXC Technologies. Yes, like in all industries, also there a lot of consolidation going on. But anyhow, I most of my professional career during that first part in the consulting, I was doing consulting and project management for what we would call large scale software implementations, like for example SAP and Microsoft to a lesser extent, and to implement this kind of ERP and CRM systems in large companies like Atlas Copco, like Nestle, and so on. So very satisfying and great job, I must say. But at a certain moment, I wanted to do something for myself. I wanted to start a known company. As an engineer, also, I wanted to create something. And then, software, because that was my experience. Basically, enterprise software would be a logical choice. So then in 2012, also already a while ago, I started PointerPro. Well, back then it was called Survey Anyplace, because we focused on surveys, software for online surveys. And the main use case back then was like customer satisfaction surveys. But over time, we evolved more into assessments with personalized reports. And this was better product market fit, like they say it in startup jargon. So it means that it's a smaller market, but it's more differentiated. So it's easier for a starting company to get a certain market share, and especially to get customers and make money basically. So that was in 2019 that we switched into the assessments, and then also we changed our name from Survey Anyplace into PointerPro, because we wanted the word survey, we didn't want it in the name anymore, because we did so much more than surveys. So basically, now we do assessment software mainly for professional services companies. And we do like assessment software. We automate the advice process for them, but the higher goal is really them enabling to scale without always having to recruit new people. Yeah, they can digitize a part of their services thanks to our tool, and in that way they can grow their business without always having to recruit new people. That's a bit the idea behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that if you're very focused on billable hours, having something that allows you to basically scale your services without having to spend additional man hours. That's a very cost-effective way for a services business to increase their revenues and overall value for their customers. If we're taking a little bit of a step backwards to when you first started, like what was one of the first moments you identified like a gap in back then the survey market, but once you got started, that you identified the gap actually for the assessments that were currently available?
Yeah, we like in a period that we still were doing like the surveys, we we knew that we had to find something that was more differentiated than just a survey, just a customer satisfaction survey, because that was like more commodity. You have a lot of players in that field. And we tried several things. We tried like, especially by listening to our customers and also our own idea about it. We tried, for example, like surveys at events with like QR codes where you can scan the badge of like QR code on the badge of the visitor, and then you can fill in a short survey, and then it's synchronized with CRM. These kind of things. We tried things with training and gamification. We tried like a more audit and store check use cases. But yeah, we didn't see really product market fit in those, let's say, cases. And then the problem is that you see it only when you have done it, and then there's already like a lot of effort consumed. So that's why it took so long. But then for the assessments, also there, I mean, it was not like a magical dream or a genius idea or so. It was mainly listening to customers. When customers say like, okay, it's fine, the survey, but I need you to produce a personalized PDF report after people having take the survey. Then okay, you can hear it once, and then the second customers ask the same, and then third customer, and then at a certain moment, you're beginning to think, okay, what if we build a generic solution for this? And then that's how the idea it came to life. And then in 2019, we added a reporter. That's the name that we have used to call it. We added reporter functionality to the questionnaires, in fact. And then we had the whole end-to-end solution where you can ask the questions. You can derive like the insights or the logic that then defines the personalized content, which is displayed in the report.
And were there like a specific type of customer or user of the back then survey platform that were asking for this functionality? Were there any, how do you say, like similarities between them?
Yeah, mostly companies in professional services, like also often in coaching and HR, but not always. Mostly broader professional services. And in terms of size and geography, geography was like Western countries, but that was always our focus. That didn't change too much. And the size of the companies, like not the very small ones, I would say, but all the rest could use it. For the very small ones, it's sometimes too expensive, and the license is too expensive, or their volume doesn't justify the cost to having a software for this.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine that there's like a certain threshold for once something like this makes sense. Do you have maybe an example of one of the conversations you've had with one of your earlier customers that maybe shaped some of the like the product roadmap or the way that you guys were transforming the initial survey platform towards more of like the assessment platform?
Yeah, I think, for example, we had a consulting company who is working on like intercultural assessments for their customers, like our big corporations where you have different departments, and then we do like a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and these different cultures have to work together. So they have assessments for that. And we worked with them very closely to convert them from their current assessment platform onto PointerPro. But when I say the current assessment platform, and we see that with most of the customers, it's more like we sometimes called it duct tape ICT, because they use things that are not made for assessments. but they use it for assessments basically. So they collect the data via Google Forms, then they put it in Excel. They do the calculation in Excel, then they export it to Word, or they import the values into Words, and then they save it as PDF, and then they send it manually with email to the customers. All these things are, of course, these are not bad tools like Excel and Google Forms and so. But the end-to-end flow, it's possible to do it like that, but it requires some manual work. And when the volumes tend to increase, then you see these companies suffer, and then they look for like a more professional assessment solution, and then often they come to us.
Yeah. So there's like, is the main use case then when the amount of manual work that they need to do becomes a little bit too much, that they find the most value in PointerPro, or are there also other aspects within the assessment world that is very uniquely like from PointerPro that adds value to their process?
Yeah, on the first question, I would say yes. So if they do already assessments, the ideal client already does assessments, but with suboptimal tooling, then when the volume increases, the pain also increases, and then they look for a more professional tool. Now there's other aspects also that come into play. For example, the fact to be able to give a tool to your customers. Not our customers, but the customers from our customers, to distribute the assessments themselves. That's more advanced. But in that way, we enable service companies to sell not only service, but also software. And they can license it differently than just the time and material hourly billing, which is interesting for them. So they can sell a piece of software to their customers. That's one example. Like a second example is also the dashboarding that we have. This can also be like a plus in comparison with their current situation. So they can create dashboards, but they can also create create dashboards for their clients, and their clients can then use the dashboards, which is a bit the model that we pursue. We want to of course, to make the best software for our customers, but we also enable our customers to sell not only services to their customers, but also sell services and software to their customers.
Okay, so if I understand it correctly, they're like the main use cases that you're working for right now are like internal assessments, for example, for HR departments, more some of the external assessments that, for example, a professional services business does for their clients. And then there's like a third use case, which is more of like, hey, they are now also a software provider for their clients, which can then leverage all the functionalities. Am I understanding this correctly?
We see this as a next step into on the maturity level, if you will. They start with the first two cases that you mentioned, and then eventually after a while, and they go to the distribution portal, so the customer portal that they can sell indeed as a piece of software to their clients.
And in what way did you get to the insights that this would be like a smart, how do you say that? Like a smart channel for you guys to distribute your services?
Yeah, I think it's also, of course, by talking to customers and them. There is always, if you have so many customers, then there's always there's a saying or like a quote that says like the future is here, it's just not equally distributed. So some of the customers are really thinking ahead, and you just have to listen to those ones. Of course, maybe easier said than done, but mostly someone is already doing those things that will be mainstream in the future. So there's customers that say, okay, why can't you provide us with a customer portal so we can resell the software or this piece of the software to our customers? But then also it's in our vision to professional services providers will also digitize more. Of course, I mean, I've been a consultant myself, but I have seen that like mostly digitization is focused on the internal processes of the consulting company, like invoicing and timesheets and stuff like that. I mean, probably that's all already done or almost done in those companies. But like the external process, like the client delivery and the like the advice automation and so is often lagging behind. And that's what our tool, what we want to do. We want to really automate or digitize also the advice delivery that customers give to that our consultants give to their customers.
Yeah. So how would, for example, how would you structure these conversations with your clients to uncover what is most important to them? Because you've mentioned a couple of times that actually a lot of the direction that PointerPro has been taking was based on the feedback or the input that you received from your clients. Like either they came with different use cases or they were thinking about business opportunities for themselves by leveraging your solution. But how do you make sure that what they provide you is relevant? And then for PointerPro, but also in what way does it influence like your own internal strategy when it comes to, for example, building the product?
Yeah, when going to a customer, I would always ask how they organize their assessments currently. Well, this is if you're already like, I mean, you have to have some knowledge about the customer, of course. If I don't know whether they're doing assessments, yes or no, I would start with like more high level, like what they think about digitizing their services, their advice. If they thought about it already, do they think that's a valuable idea? I would take that as a conversation starter. But mostly we know that they're doing assessment in some form and shape. And then we ask like, which technology do you use for it? And then oftentimes, I mean, they will say like, it's like a suboptimal, like a combination of tools and so on. And then I would try to them, let them quantify the pains, like how many time they lose with like, maybe it's an obstacle to launch new services. And then afterwards I would come with an explanation of our solution. That's the way I would do it. And then for your second question, how that influences the roadmap, we have we have a system where I would not say it's maybe not as scientific as I would like it to be. But that's all customer requests are like put in the central repository, and then we ask to different teams, the customer facing teams, what they think the value is that each of those desired functionalities has. And we have also customer advisory boards who can also give their input, and then we take kind of an average, but it's not, I mean, really scientific. It's more also a bit gut feeling, but the gut feeling is always based on data and on conversations with customers, of course.
Sorry. I really like the fact that you mentioned that you have a customer advisory board. This is something that you don't hear that often. And I think a lot of businesses would actually benefit from having like a structured process of including customer input when it comes to like, hey, where should this ship be heading towards? But you also mentioned that the way that you're doing it right now is not as scientific as you would like it. In how would you define like the scientific method, if you want to call it like this, for what you guys are currently doing? Because you do use the repository, so you're collecting the feedback, and even though you're relying on gut feel, as you say it yourself, it is founded in the data. So I'm curious what does that mean? to you, like the scientific method?
Yeah, the formal scientific way would more go in the direction of having a. I don't think you have to ask all your clients. You go to the ICP, the ideal customer profile, and there's a subset of your clients. You only ask it to them, and you have a formal score. And then, yeah, also maybe a weighting factor for depending on the importance of the customers, you can discuss about that. And then also that's one thing, and then also the same for how aligned is it with our vision, and then take kind of an average from that, and those then you will get the list that determines the priority. Then yeah, that would be the more scientific way to do it. I think. Probably you will have, I mean, maybe research and publications around that that explain how to do it.
Yeah, there are multiple ways in which you can actually use like customer insights when it comes to like prioritizing your product roadmap. I believe it's also like a quote from Henry Ford, even though it might not actually be a quote from him, that if you ask people what they want, they would say a faster horse instead of a car. But I think that is the wrong question to ask, because there's always something that lies underneath. So when it comes to, for example, the faster horse, it has nothing to do with the fact that they want a faster horse. They want to be able to travel from point A to point B in a shorter amount of time. And then, like, there are different ways in which you could do that. Could be a train, but then, for example, it lacks the flexibility of actually going where you want to go. And then a car would be a good solution to the problem, like decreasing time from point A to point B. And yes, when you factor in, for example, your ICP, then, for example, you could say like, hey, we have different tiers of ICP. So you have like the tier 1, 2, and 3. And then based on what you said, like your vision, like, hey, where do we actually want to go as a company? Then combine it with like, hey, like, how do we prioritize the feedback that we get, really get like the question behind the question? That will give you like a very good like starting point for identifying like potential opportunities or improvements in your products and features. But then it all starts first with, hey, like you have to define your ICP. I'm curious, because you've been through such a long journey. At what point did you actually narrow down your ICP, and how did that process look like for you guys?
Yeah, because we are like mainly depending on inbound marketing for lead generation. We have seen in the past, and still now to an extent, that we have a lot of different types of companies coming into the funnel, yeah, as a prospect. So you have small ones, you have big ones, different industries, different countries, yeah, everything under the sun, basically. And yeah, as a starting company, it's also difficult to say no to customer, to prospect. So that has been something that that we have thought about like quite extensively, and we came to the conclusion that like the professional services companies, which is still quite broad, of course, but who use already like assessments in some form or shape of a certain size in the Western countries, like these types of companies are ICP, and we used various methods to determine that, especially past data from sales and customer success. So those are typically the customers that have the shortest sales cycles, do complain the least about price or features, and that also have the best retention. So if you look at those characteristics, and then you see that all these type of companies that really use assessments as like to support their core business, not just as some side process or so, but to support their core business. And those happen to be in professional services for most of the time. Those fulfill those conditions. And that's then our ICP.
Yeah, what I often see is that there are like two ways of doing like your ICP homework, if you want to call it like this. Either it's how you get started. So you first define the ICP, and then you gather the insights to very well to understand like, hey, what is it that they are trying to achieve, and what is it currently that they are doing to solve for this issue, and what are like the gaps like in the ways that they are currently doing it. Like, is there like a technical problem that there might exist, or is it like a process problem that is happening with the current way of working? And then you can start building around that, or you do it the other way around, and it's basically building, promoting, and selling your product or services, and then start looking backwards. See like, hey, like who actually gets the most value? And then it could be, like you already mentioned, like you're going to look at the sales cycle and common objections, like who has the shortest sales cycle and the least amount of objections. But then also take like product usage data into account.
Yeah.
Like who uses us the most, who gets the most value actually out of the things that we are providing. And I think it's very smart to actually say like, hey, we're going to narrow down our focus on our ICP, because that also gives a lot of clarity for everything else that you do, not only building your product, but also the way that you're going to market, especially when you're very inbound lab, making sure that your positioning and your messaging is on par with your ICP. That is going to be very helpful in making sure you have high quality leads coming in that fit that profile.
Yeah, sure.
So now that you've been able to like identify your ICP, which also based, of course, on your own experience as a consultant is very much in line with what you actually kind of already knew. Are there like certain things that were new to you that you maybe did not expect when you first started out that are now actually a core part of what you guys are doing?
The fact to not only sell the software to our customers, but to enable our customers to sell software to their customers was certainly something that was new to me, or like that we didn't had in mind when starting the company. Yeah, for of course, yeah, the assessments, the fact that we would pivot into this new market segment, that was also not expected back in 2012. Basically, there were a lot of things that were not expected.
Well, the world still existed after 2012. That was something.
Yeah. So, I mean, but for the rest, I would say when I would show the company as it is now to myself in 2012, and there would be a certain number of surprises or things that I would not expect. Certainly. On the other hand, I read a lot of startup books and like. I would assume that when starting with those surveys and customer satisfaction use case and stuff like that, it would not be staying the same all time, that we would have to evolve based on customer feedback and based on all other things. So I would be, I think, that realistic, but I would not be able to predict exactly what it would be. Of course, that's, I mean, I would say also to other startup founders, or like that's the challenge, but also the interesting thing about about starting a company that there's a number of unknowns. That's welcome to the job, I would say.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to this one. Also, a lot of shiny new objects and opportunities that you might want to, or that come across your path, and then making sure that you are prioritizing the ones that actually drive your business further instead of just making sure that you're unfocused. It's also, I think, a very big thing when it comes to like all the pivots that are possible. Um, I want to take a small step back because we talked a little bit about your ICP and about the sales cycle length and some of the objections. And I'm curious that when we're looking at some of the objections that your ideal clients might not have, that some of the less ideal clients might have. Like, could you elaborate a little bit more on what would these objections, or like what these objections could be?
If there's less ideal customers, especially if there are smaller customers, it would be the objection that it's too expensive, which is which we hear most often, I would say. But that's almost a sign that the customer doesn't belong to the ICP, because too expensive is more a symptom for something else than for us. Too expensive means that the price doesn't justify the value. So maybe there's not enough transactions. Maybe the company is still in startup phase. They don't know whether they will have customers or so, and they want to use us for lead generation or for something else. And then I would say, get first your customers. That's more important than buying a tool like ours. And then I'm a bit maybe uncommercial from a PointerPro point of view, but that's really the best choice for them at that moment. Those are objections that indicate that they are not in the ICP. And also, like functionality wise, when you have use cases that are like more like further away from the core assessment use case, it can be somehow overlapping or some kind. Sometimes they even call it assessments. Sometimes they call it something else. But like, for example, exam software for schools and universities. Yeah, it's kind of an assessment, but kind of not. And then they need, for example, anti-cheating functionality, because in an exam, you want to avoid that the students cheat. We don't have that because we are not exam software. So those, if they come with those kind of requirements, we see that it's outside the ICP, and then we have to say no, because if you want to cannot accommodate for everything and then build it for them, and then becoming exam software, becoming something else, becoming assessment software, all at the same time, then you want to do everything for everybody, which is of course not good.
Nah, I think we all live in a world where we have limited resources, and making sure that you focus on the customers that you can provide the most value for is just business smarts as well. So it's disqualifying like less ideal or like not ideal clients is also part of this. So I wouldn't say that you're not commercial. I would just say that you are focused.
Yes,
I would turn it around and make it something positive. But I can also imagine that this goes actually for almost every SaaS tool out there, that there's always going to be like the conversation, especially when you're talking to bigger clients, like, hey, are we going to make something ourselves, or are we going to buy an out of the box solution? So I'm curious if this is something that you have heard, and if so, what would your response be to this?
Yeah, we actually today talking with a very big professional service company who has exactly that trade-off to make. So either keep on using their current system or buying an assessment tool like ours. And there we try to convince them, by saying that the TCO mostly the total cost of ownership mostly for our solution will be less than what they have now. But the main reason is in fact like more maybe psychological or more intangible. It's just peace of mind. You're depending on a company which does this for 12 years or with no intention to do other things in the future or so. Unless being dependent on your own IT department, where even in big companies, they struggle to get the right priorities and to, for example, if you're asking for new functionality, then you're on the roadmap for 2026 and so on. That's more the psychological, maybe the intangible reason that with us, you are a real customer, and if you ask for it, we might or we will ask you to pay for it, but then you're sure that you will get it, and that you can, be assured that it will work, and that you will have it in time, and you will have the right support. We have a professional organization. We do just that, while your internal IT department does a lot of other things. So that's a way we would present it to those customers.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like more often than not, having something that is built for this job has a way shorter time to value, because basically it is you step in, you onboard, and you can use it. And then also like you're basically their innovation department when it comes to the assessments. Like they just deliver what you ask for, and you guys are continuously pushing like the product features and possibilities surrounding these assessments.
Yeah.
So you're not only just providing them with a tool, but also with the updates from the future. So yeah, I can imagine that it would make a lot of sense if you have the scale and if you have the use case for it, then it would make complete sense to use something like PointerPro.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned support also. Like you work globally. And is support something that your customers rely heavily on? And then if so, then what types of questions do they ask your support team? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, we operate globally. We have support also in both US time zones and European time zones. And our tool is the ICP is also the ideal customer profiles. Those customers are using our tool for complex use cases. Yeah, more and more complex use cases. That's also what we want to focus on. It's not just like simple assessments with 10 questions and then a couple of recommendations. It's really more complex than that. So that's why we need a strong support team, and we need also onboarding, which is included in the license, which is mandatory when you buy our tool. Not because it's that complex. We have a user-friendly tool. You don't need technical knowledge, but there's many possibilities, and to figure out how those possibilities match to your use case, onboarding is needed. You can do it yourself also with the help guides and documentation, but it just takes much longer. And for customer retention purposes, it's better to do an onboarding for that. So that being said, like most of the questions for the support team relates to, for example, how to do certain things in the report, how to set up the formulas, how to do special designs for the survey, how to do integrations, how the API works, stuff like that. And even when it's documented, they still come to the support team, and we also allow it because we think that extra level of service, that also benefits. The retention would also benefit from that.
Yeah, I can imagine. You also mentioned that it's like the ideal customer has this as part of like their main, how do you say that? Like
Yeah,
it's essential to their business.
yeah.
And even though it's well documented, just having like a person to talk to
Yeah,
or
yeah,
knowing that you can rely on support, it's also like gives you some ease of mind when it comes to this.
exactly.
And so we've talked a lot now about the journey of PointerPro, like how it all started 12 years ago and where you guys are heading towards now with some like unexpected turns. Now basically getting sort of like a reseller model in there as well. Um, if you take a look a bit more towards like the future, like I would love to get a little bit of your perspective on the market that you're active in, like the software market in general, but maybe even more for the people that or the companies that are active in professional services, because there's a lot of things happening right now, and I'm curious, like what do you see is going to be one of the biggest like impacts for that?
Yeah, for professional services, as I say, as I said, digitizing the core like advisory process next to the internal processes, which are mostly already, yeah, already automated. Um, this advisory process is still highly manual. To automate that will be a big step forward. It's also our belief that, and it's not about automating everything or replacing the consultant or whatsoever, but like the more transactional advice, which has to be given over and over again, based on the same type of information, based on the same model. That will be the first candidate to be automated. For example, in cybersecurity, you could have basic things like implementing like multi-factor authentication, antivirus, all these kind of things. Like the basic advice that you give, that could be automated via these assessments. And then afterwards, for the more complex questions or more towards the top of the pyramid, then you will still need a human consultant or combination of the two. We see also AI playing a role in there, of course, where we see that the you have already like off-the-shelf AI like ChatGPT and so on, and I mean companies are using it, but companies are I think interested in having their own ChatGPTs, their own bots based on their own data and with privacy assurance, security, specialized in what they want to achieve, and not this generic ChatGPT, which is of course very performant, but they like a professional service company in legal, for example, will be more interested in a very specialized legal chat tool that is private when you put legal clients from one of their legal data from one of their clients in that you know that it's not used for other purposes. They rather have this kind of chat or AI functionality than the generic chat GPT where you don't have all these words. I mean, basically used to train the model, so you don't know whether it's private. It's not specialized. You can do everything with it. I see a lot of potential there. And
Yeah.
we have also to think about how we will serve that wave, so to say.
Wow. With assessments, you can collect a lot of unstructured data. As I know from my own experience running win-loss analysis. and using a large language model to basically structure and tag, for example, the more of like the open field
Yeah,
questions, if you
yeah.
want to call it like this, can be very helpful. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And if we look a little bit towards like maybe next year, for example, like what are some of the things that are on the roadmap for PointerPro that you want people to actually know about?
Two things are certainly the introduction of native integrations, and then the AI, and we focus mainly on AI for data analytics. So to make it easier to inquiry the data that you've collected via the assessments, um, to inquire it via human language, like to ask like, do you see correlation between people in this country and that country on like asking this question, and even can you visualize it and everything? I mean, these kind of things. So AI for data analytics, and then the integrations. So for the integrations, we have heard it from a lot of customers also that they want to have that. For example, when you do a lead generation assessment, that the results of these assessments are transferred to your CRM, be it HubSpot or Salesforce, and natively. So without having a third-party tool like Zapier in between, just natively, but also natively self-configurable without code. So you really need to say like, this field of the survey or the assessment has to go to that field in Salesforce, for example. You or the users should be able to configure that without technical knowledge, so in a really no-code environment. So if you have all these requirements, then you can apply that to a lot of tools, like not only Salesforce and HubSpot, but like a lot of SaaS tools. Then you have a very powerful functionality to ensure that basically your application, our application PointerPro, is like integrated in the application landscape of your customer, which has in its turn like benefits in terms of retention. Because we do not think that for this native integration we can ask additional money, because people kind of expect that the SaaS tool has native integration in 2024. But it will pay back, we expect, in better retention.
My mind is already spinning in circles when I think about the possibilities of having a self-assessment being done, having that information in my CRM, and then, for example, being able to run personalized campaigns based on the self-assessment that was collected. So I think that is something, especially more top of funnel use case, can be very interesting. But also not just for the retention of your clients, but the retention of the clients of your clients, so the customer's customer, being able to leverage like the assessments and see, for example, trends occurring across their customers, and being able to act on this is also something that I can think. I see a lot of opportunity there as well. That's very exciting, Stefan. Like a lot of cool things happening. We are going to round off the conversation because we're already a little bit past time. Every now and then, while you just keep talking, time flies by. Before we close off, normally I would ask somebody like two things. So one, if you could go back in time, like what lesson that you've learned that you want to share with your past self? What is one thing that you should say to younger Stefan, like, hey, you should definitely keep doing this? And what is one thing that you would say to your younger self and say, like, hey, you have to ditch this immediately? Like, what would those two things be?
The first thing I would say is to start with marketing early, and with online marketing, online presence, also search engine optimization, but it comes down to creating content and to see that this content is picked up by the relevant publications, websites, and so on in your domain. We started with that very early, and we still benefit from that because it's something that really capitalizes along the time. So that is more difficult to copy for competitors. So so it's really this online presence which is making sure that you're visible where your customers or your prospects are, and then Google will also pick it up. And then in the search results, you'll be on top. And then most recently, AI, ChatGPT. If you ask questions like which are the best assessment tools, all these kind of things also there. I mean, ChatGPT is also trained based on online knowledge. So if your online presence is good, then ChatGPT will also pick you up. So it's not only about Google. So that's one thing that I certainly would continue to do or to do again. One thing which I could do better is maybe like this, during these years that we were looking for the product market fit, basically. I said like we pursued a number of paths, which after a while, it was clear that these were dead ends. Of course, you cannot predict the future, and then you cannot predict which path would then be the actual product market fit, but I would work on a way to be able to more quickly decide whether something is a dead end or not, like to iterate more quickly and to not lose so much time with that. So that's in that case we would maybe have had our pivot earlier and then coming on the market faster with the assessment tool. And now it has took quite a lot of time.
So work on your online presence and marketing from the get-go, and iterate quickly, and don't be afraid to, as you would say, like kill your babies.
Yeah.
Or sooner. Yeah. And then you also mentioned you read a lot of books, especially about startups. Like, what's like the last book that you've read that other founders would also get value from? Just as a quick side note.
The last book was Rework from the guys from 37 Signals. It's not like a recent book, but it has like its second edition, I think. And I found it very enlightening because they don't have to agree with everything that I say, I think. But it's good to makes you think about certain things. And for a bootstrapped like entrepreneur like ourselves, it's also good to recognize some things and to see also some things that you don't have to do. You don't have to do everything to be successful. And that I think it's interesting about this book. They do it their way and they're also successful now. Of course, I think you still have to interpret and to see what is applicable for you. But it gets you thinking about certain things, I think, yeah.
Well, I'll make sure that there's a link to the book. People want to read it, that they know where to find it. If people want to learn more about PointerPro, or maybe about you and the possibilities, where should they go to first?
Yeah, PointerPro, they can go to the website, pointerpro.com. There is information about our products, but also about use cases and also about things that you, that you can use independently of our products, like how to create a maturity model, these kind of things. So some things that you have to do before you go buy a product like ours. So that's the website. And for myself, I'm most active on LinkedIn. So if you search for my name, Stefan Debois, you will certainly find me, and I'm always happy to connect to listeners and to talk about business or other things.
Perfect.
I'm certainly happy to do that.
I'll make sure that All the links are in the description so that people can easily find you and find PointerPro. So that is it for today. Stefan, thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing your story. It's been quite the journey, and we're gonna keep in touch. And for everybody else that is listening, thank you for listening till the end. I hope this was an enlightening story for you, and it might given you some inspiration to, not be afraid to pivot every now and then when you think it's necessary. And as Stefan said, like make sure that you're keep working on not only your personal brand and your online presence, but that you're also not afraid to kill your babies when you don't think or when you don't believe that they're going to work out. Thanks so much. Till next time.